All right. James Thompson, welcome to the show. How we doing today?
Great, man. Thanks for having me.
So glad we could get some of your time today. You're a seven-figure entrepreneur doing some fix and flips out of North Carolina virtually.
Yep, totally virtual, semi-nationwide. Started in the I-81 market, moved to Raleigh, North Carolina just about a year ago. So loving it down here.
Awesome. What do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions people have about the real estate industry?
Man, probably the biggest thing is that it looks really easy online and it's really simple. You've probably heard people say this on podcasts before. It's a really simple business. The organization, the structure of the whole thing, you could put it on one piece of paper, but it is hard. And that's how we earn the money that we make is it's hard. 99% of people fall on their face a little bit, and then there's 1% that rake it in. And that's probably the biggest thing just from what you see online. It just looks flashy, looks easy. The important thing with that said is that it's super real. It's a very tangible business, and it's really easy to build systems because it is simple. So you can definitely turn this into something that is scalable. And you don't have to do it all yourself. You can have a team do it. So those are probably the big things.
Before we get into scaling and building a team, can you tell us a little bit about where you started?
Yeah, man. Let's see, how far back should I go back? So I'm 29 now. When I was 20 years old, I got into network marketing and was really big into reading books, some mentors then, lots of audios. Did that for 3 years and really early on got passive income just drilled into my head because that's why you do network marketing is you want to retire young, you want passive income, all of that kind of stuff. And so that kind of thought process ended up leading me into being interested in real estate. I never actually read Rich Dad Poor Dad, but I read a spin-off of it that was essentially the same book, but just geared towards network marketing. And so that all just clicked for me. I bought my first house when I was 23. I basically watched some YouTube videos and was like, oh man, okay, I got to get into real estate. I didn't know anything. And so I just found an agent, went on the MLS, and I found a 3-story townhome that had a basement. The first floor had a bathroom, but it was a half bath with plumbing for a full bath. So I bought it. It's a pocket listing. I got it like a week before it went on the MLS. My agent dragged him around. He probably showed me 15 or 20 houses. I'm talking about cash flow, and there's no cash flow in the MLS. But anyway, I bought it and threw a door up on that room down there. So it was a bedroom and turned that half bath into a full bath, rented that out, lived in it, and did a house hack for my first deal. Ended up meeting my wife a little bit before that, and she was really interested in real estate too. And I guess probably about a year and a half after that, we got duplex. She went and found a duplex on the MLS, which we still own. We lived in one side, rented out the other, fixed them up a little bit, and lived there for about a year, which was brutal. It's a great property. Me and her and a 90-pound golden retriever lived in an 800 square foot 2-1 for about a year. Would have been fine for us, but I do have kind of a big, high energy dog. And really, where we actually got into the business, we got into real estate then. That was like our start to real estate in a macro sense, but actually getting into like our business now, basically a guy I used to work with, I was in fitness. I ran gyms and
Mhm.
sold gym memberships and stuff. One of the guys I used to work with ended up moving away and he had started flipping houses. And I saw him make a post on Facebook about taking on some people to coach. And my wife and I hired him to handhold us. And we did our first 2 deals with him. And the rest is kind of history. That was 2021 when we started our LLC and actually really started the business. I was still 25, almost 26 then, and locking up deals August 21, started locking up a couple of properties. We were flipping them all though. We skipped wholesaling, just liquidated everything we had, credit cards, investment accounts, savings, and bought our first 4 flips before we even sold the first one, quit our jobs before we even sold the first one. I was really lucky to have her because she basically did all the operations of the business and I did all the sales and marketing, which was a great team, and started selling properties beginning of 22. Did 10 deals that year, our first full year. And the rest is kind of history. We eased in doing the more surface level stuff, just doing house hacks. I ended up selling my townhouse, but we still have that duplex. But as soon as we made the decision that we were going to be real estate investors, we just went all in, burned the boats, liquidated our accounts. We had, by the time that first deal closed, which we only made like 12 grand on as a fix and flip because we didn't run our numbers right. We had no money in our account. We basically were like, that if that deal didn't close and it fell through like before the closing table, we would have been in a bad spot. But it was just, hey, we're young, no kids at the time, and burn the boats. Let's go all in. And it panned out for us.
That's awesome. And it sounds quite frightening. I wonder what that shift was like from liquidating all your assets. So, all right, here we go. We're jumping into this because it sounds like there wasn't much hesitation. You were aware of the money that you could make and you were just ready to put your best foot forward.
Yeah, I saw the projections on the deals. So the first deal we made 12. The second deal, we actually ended up with our coach. Part of the deal was we gave him 30% of the net. So I guess we kept 8. The second deal we sold, the top line was 112. That was actually our biggest deal ever. So he got 30% of that. So we made 80 something. And I knew we were going to make that. That kind of made it a little easier, but I didn't know that when we bought the other two. We didn't go under contract on that one until a little bit later. But one of the things that makes people really take like massive action like that, at least for us, and this is just what I've seen with other people, they just have to be really fed up with where they're at. So a lot of people that don't take a lot of action, they're in a weird place where it's like they're not happy with where they're at, but it's not bad enough. And my wife did not like what she was doing. She was going to be a financial planner. She was working at like a boutique financial planning company. It's like one main planner there. And then she was being brought in to replace him when he retired and take over the books. But she ended up hating it. And the gyms that I worked at, the guy that I worked for, and they were in business for 12 years, but he ended up having to close his doors. And so I bounced into a couple other things. We started a marketing company. We were selling ads in gyms. So we had like big TVs, and then COVID shut all those down. So we had, I think, 6 gyms that we had ads in, but then it stopped. So then I had to do something else, ended up doing life insurance for a year, hated it, and was just like, man, I've always like real estate's it. So we both were at a place where we were very unhappy with the direction we were going. So it was like, dude, even if we lose it all, we already hate what we're doing right now. So it just felt like it was bad enough on our happiness level and the direction we were going that it allowed us to take huge action. If we were good enough where it becomes really hard. So if you're unhappy but not unhappy enough, I would almost encourage you to let it get worse so that you could actually be motivated to take the action needed to really do something drastic. Is I've always been an ambitious guy. I've always had a big vision for my life. If I was making 85 grand a year, I don't know that we would have done that. I was making 50, 40, 50, 60 grand a year, and when it was up and down because it's sales. So it's just, and she was making like 30,000. It just wasn't a lot because we weren't married at the time. So it was like both of us were like, we got to do something totally different. And yeah, like I said, we just got to a point, burn the boats. And in my opinion, like that's not the right path for everyone, but for us, I also knew that we're both action takers. So I just said, if somebody can do it, I think we can. So that was, but yeah, it was scary. It was scary. Sounds really good now to say that we did that.
Yeah, it definitely does sound like the trial by fire there. And I think you touched on something pretty important is a lot of people might be on the decline from comfortability, but it's not bad enough to actually motivate them to get out and take some action. Sadly, a lot of people do have to hit rock bottom before they finally get that fire to get moving.
And look, you don't have to be like real rock bottom where you're like on the streets. It's all about perspective. You just need to view your life as rock bottom, even if it's not really. It's all about how you perceive your life. But if you just get to a point where it's screw this, then maybe that'll push you into doing something. And real estate, in my mind, it's hard, but in my opinion, it's the most realistic way for someone to, and I'm not even talking about passive income. I know everyone gets into real estate for passive income, but from an active income standpoint, as an investor flipping and wholesaling houses, it's the most realistic thing in my mind for somebody to make pretty good money of all the options. I've looked at a bunch of stuff, obviously, and I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. It's just, it's realistic. It's not easy. And it's not going to get done for you, but it's realistic.
So, from you and your wife starting out and getting those first 4 flips done, how did you guys from there scale to where you are now and hitting 7 figures?
Yeah, so really what happened for us, we did 10 deals in that first year, and it was just her and I. We weren't working a lot, to be honest, because we were a tag team and we had delegated our roles really clearly. Like I did sales and marketing, I found the money, and then she would come behind me and make sure it didn't all fall apart. It didn't take a ton of hours. And so we did 10 deals, and then rates started going up kind of end of 22. We had two flips that kind of ended up dragging out. We were supposed to make 120 grand on two flips, and I think we ended up making 40 or 50 total on the two. So it like more than cut in half, and it freaked us out because we were like, maybe we were just riding a wave. We did really well that first year, and it ended up being fine for us because they were deep, but it freaked us out. So we were like, everyone's talking about how the market's going to crash if rates are going up. So we had one cold caller at the time overseas. I've never done cold calling. We've always paid to play. And we turned it off, and we're like, okay, the market's going to crash. We'll find stuff on the MLS. We'll get stuff from other wholesalers. Like, why have the risk and the overhead? And so we did that for a couple months, probably about 6 months, and did one deal in that time from a wholesaler. And so then we're looking around, okay, the market hasn't crashed. Everything's still chugging along. And we just sat back and we're like, dude, we don't want to retire, because we got into it thinking, let's make a bunch of money, retire, get in, get out, and like ride into the sunset. And we were like, dude, I don't really want to keep working 25 hours a week. Like, I want it. Give it all to me. So we hired a new coach at that point to help us scale, and basically just doubled down on marketing, hired our first person. It was just a part-time dispo person. And that was about April 2023. And from that point until the end of the year, we did about $1 million, just me and my wife and one part-time dispo person. We ended up hiring our first acquisition person towards the end of the year. I didn't do a great job hiring them or onboarding them really, but it was late, so it wasn't really enough time in the year for them to participate in that. Maybe one deal or two close that they contributed to. And from there, it's really just been a matter of finding good people, spending the money it takes to increase marketing. That's like the number one thing. That's like the life of the business is you need leads. I don't know how people try and do this business without leads. It's a lead business. And now fast forward a little bit, we've got 7 people on the team. I spend a ton of money in marketing. Not like relatively to some other people, maybe it's not a ton, but I spend 5 figures every month on marketing. And we've got 3 departments. We've got transactions, dispo, and acquisitions. I've got multiple people in each of them, and it's painful. We had some months we lost money for sure, trying to figure it out, hiring wrong people. I've had to fire a few people and made bad deals and stuff. You pivot, and probably the biggest pivot we made in that time period was going from doing backyard market. Like when we were up in ID1, we were doing like 2 to 5 contracts a month, and I was spending a ton of money per contract, just bottlenecking. I ended up pulled some data, and I'm pretty sure in 2023 we did about 20% of the assignments that happened from the ID1 market, where I'm sure a lot of the people watching this are listening from. And the nationwide thing was definitely tough, at first, because it's a whole different underwriting thing. Deals are, dude, there's some parts of this country that are very different. They're all very different. So, but really in I'd say the last 4 months, we made that switch like end of last summer, maybe July. And I'd say probably around like October is when it started like really clicking, and we started, doing a dozen plus contracts a month. And that's where we're at now.
You said you're going nationwide. So how did you decide when it was actually time to not focus on a single market, but expand outwards?
The big thing is, here's the truth of the industry, is that you'll hear people say, I'm a wholesaler. Everyone is taking deals to the MLS that's a wholesaler. If you're going to do this thing at scale, it is almost impossible to do it without having any kind of an MLS strategy. You'll hear a lot of people talk about novations or wholetailing. They'll just buy a deal, relist it, or they'll do fix and flip. The people who make backyard market work, like one singular market at scale, even if you're mostly wholesaling, you have to take some deals down and flip them, because you will spend more per lead to do like an isolated market. If you're doing PPC, direct mail, PPL, whatever it is, there's just a limit to how much is available. So the way you win is by spending, and your cost per contract continues to go up. So the way somebody makes that work backyard market is you have to be willing to flip. That's what I noticed, is like all the people who do one market, they all at scale. I'm not talking about 1 or 2 or 3 deals a month, 4 deals. And if you're in a bigger market, maybe you can do 5. But if you're going to do 10 plus contracts a month in one market, You just have to flip houses. And when I sat back and looked at what are we really good at, I have the best sales process in the whole industry because I've seen everyone's sales process. There's one kind of main guy right now who's saying he's the sales guy. I actually have two of his old employees, and I know I have a bunch of people in some of the groups I'm in that run his script. I gave them my script. They're like, dude, your sales process is the best. Um, it's because I've merged it from multiple coaches and taken pieces and made this thing that just works. So I just looked at what's our competitive advantage? Ours is sales. We're really good at doing phone sales. We have a great script, and I think we can beat people there. Whereas like on fix and flip, yeah, we can do that, and we're pretty good at running flips, but I wouldn't say we have a competitive advantage there. And so the decision was basically like, do we want to go deeper in one market, continue to spend all the money on the marketing, and go deeper on fix and flip to get the scale? And basically be the guy who's willing to make the least on a deal to hit the scale, because that's what ends up happening is you have to be willing to do some tighter deals, which is cool. But I just didn't feel like that was putting us like in our competitive advantage. And so because of that, I made the decision to go semi-nationwide. So we're not doing literally all 50 states. We do
Mhm.
probably my PPC campaign is probably like 10 states and then probably another 25 cities. So we do whole statewide campaigns and then probably 25 cities. And my cost per lead went down by, dude, it went down probably 800%. Like at one point on PPC, I was spending $650 a lead, and now we spend $70 a lead. So then you just do the math on that. So I still need I need about the same amount of leads per contract as I did at that higher cost,
Mhm.
but I'm spending instead of 600 times roughly, we need about 20 leads. So 650 times 20, that's 13 grand per contract. So you just get bottlenecked. So it works, but now we spend a little over $1,000 a contract is what it is. So we don't even need to close them all. At 13 grand, you better close every deal you lock up. You can't let any slip through. You can't mess up on anything. Now, if we're spending 12 to 1500 per contract, like it's okay if half of them don't close. We're spending $3,000 per closing. So that was the thought process there. But we are truly a sales and marketing company. I buy houses and we do flip them, but we don't really flip them. I do floors and paint, roof, HVAC. That's it. Little punch out list at most. I don't do kitchens. I don't do bathrooms. 25K or less budgets, and they're basically wholesales. So I'm buying some stuff. I just decided, hey, let's not build that out. I've met people who basically the opposite of us. They have contractors on staff instead of salespeople. They don't have marketing. They get all their
Mhm.
deals from wholesalers and agents. So he has no overhead, but he's deep on fix and flips. So when he gets a deal, he's getting the best price from the contractor, best price from the material. He does backyard markets. So he has a little warehouse full of floors and paint and all the stuff he needs, and that's his competitive advantage. I can't beat him on a flip because my cost is going to be higher. So that's how we ended up doing that, and it's worked out.
Oh, it really sounds like you guys are steamrolling. How do you manage bringing on new talent while you're, trying to juggle all this fast-paced oriented movement on the front end?
Yeah, you got to have systems and processes. So, like I mentioned, we have a really dialed in sales process. I have 3 acquisition guys now. Two of them started at the beginning of the last couple of days of December. The other one started in like October. They both were signing contracts within a week. And I basically just hammer them on 3 days of training, role playing, script training, and just do the dang script. You don't need to do anything else. The script works. Just do it. Hit all these frameworks that I'm teaching you. This is how you qualify a lead. The script does it all for you. You basically just need to do some active listening, use some common sense, but just run the play. And so I just lean heavily on the process there. Past that, the whole business from front to back is basically an assembly line. Now, something I did, our newest dispo person that we hired, we took them up from another wholesaler that was doing about 30 properties a month. And so she had 2 years of experience as a dispo manager, running a team of 3.
Mhm.
She's not our dispo manager. She's just a dispo person, but I've empowered her. I've taken her talent and her experience and paid her for that talent. And then our operations coordinator, she's basically like a TC on steroids. She does everything on the back end. She worked for a wholesaler also, doing about 30 deals a month and about $3 million a year. And so I just paid for their experience. That's obviously not free. So I paid to play with them. which kind of made onboarding a little bit easier. Once they came in, we sat down, we had meetings, and basically, what's the play? Like, what happens after we get a contract? What's the step by step process from lead comes in all the way until closing, the whole thing? There's a whole process for it, and we just follow it. Same thing every time, assembly line. At first, it's a little tough because if you're just starting out, you won't have that. I would say for most people, like your first hire should probably be like a TC slash admin person. Because if you're in this business, you should be, hopefully, you're a closer. Hopefully, you can get deals locked up. You don't want to be spending your time doing stuff that doesn't produce income, but is important. Once you have a seller and a buyer contract signed, they deal with everything else. That just frees you up to then go get more contracts signed. I'd say for most people, acquisitions is probably the last thing you should let go, just because it's the most important part. And that's kind of the path to that and how that all has come together. So it looks easy now because it's all together, but it's tough when it's happening. It is. It'll be painful. It's just no way around it. That's part of building a business.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. It sounds like you were very methodical in your process, probably making sure that as soon as you started onboarding teams, you had some SOPs in place that were very easy, very simple to follow. Was there a time when the bring onboarding was a bottleneck for you, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah, my first acquisition guy I hired, I did not do a good job training him. We had the script and stuff. It wasn't quite as buttoned up as it is now. And I just stuck him on the phones. And he actually still works here. Honestly, what I did is I just kept training him until I figured out how to be a good trainer. So it probably took 8 or 9 months for me to really get him where he needed to be. And it was mostly my fault. Like I didn't do a great job. I wasn't really clear on what I was trying to teach him. I've always been I came in with sales experience. So like I was a closer when I started. I already had that identity. I already believed that about myself. And proof is in the pudding, man. I did $1 million myself in 8 months. So obviously I was that. So I wasn't a great trainer. And honestly, we just stuck it out until I figured it out. That's it. My coaches helped. I've always had coaches. Like I have a coach right now. The coaches get more and more high level as you get more and more high level, but just keep working. And look, I also knew he was the right guy. If he wasn't the right guy, I would have let him go and started over with somebody else. And honestly, maybe that would have been faster, but he was a good core value fit, good personality fit, hustle, never quit on me, always shows up, coachable, trainable. And so when I looked at him, I'm like, this is my fault. And he's willing to stick around and work with me. So I'm going to do that back to him.
I think it takes a lot for someone to actually realize, and of course, this is not all over the board, but for someone to bring in a new hire and then go, okay, it's not your fault. Somewhere along the line, I messed up in giving you instruction. So I definitely think that's huge. When you come to some of those decisions that you have to be able to make under pressure, how do you push forward and make sure your team is still in alignment?
Yeah. So the way I make decisions is I try and make them as fast as possible. I heard a clip from Jeff Bezos. It's great. He's basically explained like there's two different types of decisions. There's ones that can be easily undone, and those ones you should make absolutely as fast as you can because you can just undo them. And I do that very well. And then there's things that are really hard to undo. Like we're switching CRMs. We're going to be live on Salesforce next week. We've been on Podio for the last 3 years. That was like 6 months of interviewing CRM companies, due diligence, like making sure it was the right thing. Very slow decision on that because like changing CRMs for a team, we've got 4,000 leads in our system, 3 years of data that all needs to be moved over. We're probably 6 weeks into the transition, and hopefully next, I think our go live date is next week finally. That was a slow decision. So the answer to your question is anything that can be easily undone, make it as quick as possible and just take action behind it. Because the only way you're going to know if it's the right or wrong call is to get the data of was that good or not. And you can just change it. If it's hard to do or it's hard to undo, put a lot of thought into it, go slow. Now, like with our team, I'll meet with the people. If I'm making a change on acquisitions, I'll consult our team, our acquisitions team. I'll mostly talk to our lead guy.
Mhm.
Same for dispo, same for transactions. And I trust my team and the feedback that they're giving me about what's happening. And a lot of times what I try and do is find out what do they think? What's their opinion of what we should do? Take that in, and then I'm the filter. And I might not fully agree with them, and I might say we should do something different, but I want their information. And if possible, if I believe in their idea, I will actually try and use that and run with that. Because what that does is it empowers the people working for you, shows them that you trust them, shows them that you believe in them, that they get it. And again, if it's a easily undone thing, we'll just pivot in 30 days. We'll give it the time it needs. But the big thing is on everything, it just needs to be followed with massive action. You can do stuff totally wrong and fudge the whole thing. But if you're taking massive action behind it, you can make it work for a little bit and then you just pivot and just don't overthink it.
When it comes to building your team out, how important would you say it is to establish those core values up front?
We actually don't have core values. I don't have a poster up on the wall. I haven't written out, here's our core values as a team. But if we did have core values, the number one thing would be setting expectations and trying to follow through on those expectations. So pretty much everything we do gets run through that filter. What expectations are we setting? And can we follow through? Can we at least try and follow through on those expectations to the best of our ability? So I treat the team like that too.
Hmm.
When I hire somebody, I try and set expectations about what the role is. I sell them on the position, why it's good, but at the same time, I basically try and unsell them on the position and I tell them why it's hard and why they shouldn't do it. I just try and be really honest about what it is. And I find that what that does is it keeps us in alignment. Any issue you've ever had in your life, I'm with people, whether it's your parents, your siblings, your girlfriend, your wife, your business partner, your coworkers, whatever it is, almost every time you're going to have a people problem. If you really look at it, it's expectation mismanagement is all it is. Every problem I have with my wife is just expectation mismanagement, or somebody fell short of expectations, or maybe like I or she didn't communicate the expectations well. And so the other person like fell short or maybe didn't understand what the expectations were. And so with people, if you focus on that, getting that part right, then a lot of the other stuff will fall into place. And then as far as other core values, dude, don't hire people that have red flags. Like there's toxic people. Just dump them. Don't have people like that in your life. Don't have them work for you. But it's the same as the decision making thing. It might be scary to hire somebody and to fire them. Once you do it once, you're like, dude, this is it's not that big a deal. If you're wrong about a person and they are not in alignment with you and they're shady, they're doing weird stuff, or they just have poor work ethic, we overcome that now by putting them through a working interview in our interview process. But I hired somebody in August and they made it 3 days before I cut them loose. I was like, dude, this is not going to pan out. And that was my first person I ever really fired.
Mhm.
And I had a ton of anxiety about it. Then as I did it, she was still in the room and I was immediately relieved. I'm like, oh, dude, I'll fire anyone if they're not a good fit. And just be transparent about who you are, how you operate. And what I found is like with our team, I accidentally hired a whole bunch of people. We all agree about everything. Politically, we're all on the same page. We all have the same sense of humor. I didn't do that on purpose, but like I'm a straight shooter. The way I interview people, like I talk the same way I'm talking right now. I drop F bombs in my interviews. I don't try and put on a show. And that's panned out for us.
It sounds like you've got a great system set up. Going back to those working interviews, how do those work? You had her on for 3 days. Was she just making calls for you?
No, she actually got hired. I had to just let her go. She was late every day. Just which for a day, I'm not a big time guy. We have a morning meeting. I told her like, you better be here for the morning meeting. I'm not a time guy, but we have a morning meeting at 9:30 every day. You better not be late to that. It's 3 days in a row. And then I gave her a task to do that was like, should have taken her like 45 minutes. I showed her how to do it, then had her show me how I did it, made sure she didn't have any questions. Okay, let me know when you're done. And then she asked to leave early 3 hours later because it was raining. And I was like, did you finish? And then she was like, she didn't finish. I'm like, dude, what are we doing here? But the working interviews is key. So I have a 4-step interview process for acquisitions. Still working through it transparently. I'm still working through it on Dispo and in transactions. But you'll in this business, you'll hire more acquisition reps than anything else. So what we do is we do a phone call, just a regular phone call interview. The only outcome we're looking for that is just logistically, does the job work for them? Do the hours work? Does the location work? Yeah, just ask. You're just looking for a couple key questions. Is there anything just super surface level? You can just cut them. Just get a feel for how do they sound, and just ask them maybe a little bit about what made them interested in the job, what they're looking for, and just feel it out. Try and keep it to 15 minutes. And if they pass that, don't make it super complicated. But you'll cut a bunch of people just based on like logistics of the position. So then you bring them in for a one-on-one. I try and keep it to 45 minutes to an hour. I'm a talker, so it takes 90 minutes more times than not. And then from there, if I like the person and seems like, hey, this will be a good fit, then I tell them, hey, I'm gonna have you come back in and meet the team. They show up, and I tell them, hey, I got a surprise for you. We're gonna put you on the phones today and see how you do. And the big thing I'm looking for is I actually don't care if they suck. How high does their anxiety go? If they're a salesperson and they told me they have experience, they should not be a fish out of water, like what the heck is going on. They should be a little nervous, but it should be in a normal range. If I went and interviewed
Manageable.
for a sales, yeah, it should be not that big a deal. So we give them the script. I give them a light training on it, give them an overview. I give them 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes to go read the script on their own, try and memorize it, bring them back in, we role play it, and then I stick them on a dialer on an old list of leads. And I'm there live next to them, and I just want to see how those calls go. Do they just fall on their face, or can they think on their feet? And if we can get a couple people to answer, can I coach them on one thing in between calls, and can I see them implement that on the spot? And I don't care what the outcome is. I know it's going to be bad, but I can tell you, like, the two guys that I have now, like, they did really well. The guy we hired at the end of December, I gave him the script. He came back in 2 minutes later. He came from car sales. He was selling 20 to 25 cars a month. Came right in. I'm good, man. Let's role play. I had two of our other guys show him how to do it, how
Hmm.
they do it, and then I had him role play it. I'm like, all right, you want to do it again? He's like, no, man, I'm good. Put me on the phone. I'm ready to go. And I'm like, oh man, that's what you're looking for. And he did great. He was fantastic. He honestly nailed it. Our other guy wasn't perfect, but when he was on the phones, he was fluid, sounded good, was able to think on his feet, come up with things to say, banter a little bit, and he wasn't nervous. I did a working interview probably 3 weeks ago for a guy we were thinking about hiring. Great in the one-on-one, brought him in. Dude, we literally didn't even get him on the phones. He was he literally couldn't read the script. He couldn't stop stumbling bad enough role playing it to even get through the script without having to start over. And we did that for 45 minutes. And I'm like, no, this isn't going to work. So anyway, I'll try and wrap this part up. The fourth step, if that looks good, is I actually bring them in to meet the team. And I basically, what I do is we do a team hangout. I get some coffee. We all hang out for 45 minutes to an hour. And I'm just watching. And I basically tell the team, hey, if anyone isn't feeling this person, we all have to show up to work 40, 50 hours a week. We all have to work somewhere. I don't want you guys working with somebody that you don't want to work with. If you feel like it's not going to be a fit, you all have an emergency parachute. If anyone says, nah, I'll cut them. We won't hire them. Haven't had that happen yet. But what that does is it reinforces trust with the team, shows them that you care about them, shows them that you trust them, shows that you're prioritizing culture. You're
Hmm.
literally giving them an opportunity to pull the plug on somebody if they're not feeling it. Like I said, I haven't had that happen yet, but what it does in reinforcing trust with the team and me and the decisions of who we're bringing on, just that alone is worth doing that step. So pretty much by the time they're there, I'm going to hire them. They obviously made it through the working interview. Like, I'm good. So then we get them started. So that's how we do it. And it is, man, it is locked in. I've got a buddy who does recruiting, and he told me, like, that's as good as it gets.
I think the team cohesion thing is big. Giving the team members the final say, sounds like everybody that's made it through has been pretty solid. It would have to be like a huge character flaw that got missed for the
Yeah.
team to just X-nay them like that.
It needs to be that they said something weird to one person. They just leaned over and made like a weird joke or something that's, I don't know about that, man.
Low questionable.
Yeah. Yeah. Because people are usually putting on like a good show at that point. But yeah, I'm sure at some point we'll have it happen.
What's a leadership mistake that you've made that changed your approach to how you manage your team?
Honestly, I would probably tie that back to the poor training that I did with that first acquisition guy. just being too passive on it. I don't think I'm a perfect leader by any means, but I honestly think that's one thing that I've done reasonably well at, that I didn't have any major flaws on. Because again, the expectations has always been like really big for me. Man, honestly, like that ties into leader. Like if you're going to lead people, like part of leading people is having good expectation management with them. But it's also, you have to have a vision that like they fit into. And in one of our interviews, I'll tell people my story and I'll tell them where I'm going. And then I'll tell them the story of the business and where the business is going and what my vision is for the company and what the vision for the position could be and for them. And I'll talk to them about that. And like when I do one-on-ones with people, which honestly, I should probably do more than I do, but we do them. But when I do that, the first question I ask is, are you happy? And then from there, I talk to them about, where do you see yourself going? What are your goals? I don't even care if it's at work. I just want to know, what are your goals? And then I'll reinforce, here's where I see us going, and making sure that's in alignment, expectations. Because if you have somebody who wants to be a manager, but there's not going to be a spot for them. Back to the interview thing, if you have a person you've already hired that you're molding to take a leadership role, you can't hire another person that's like communicating to you. That's like an important thing for them at the company that they work for, is that they want to have upward mobility. Like companies like ours, like you're not going to have 50 people. You have 12 to 20 and fully built out doing $5 to $10 million a year. Like you're going to have 20 people at max. There's only so many of those that can go around. Really, my big advice for somebody on that is expectation management, communicating a really clear vision, and then checking back in on that vision and understanding that your team members' vision as you're going, and can't just have that conversation when you hire them and then just leave it be. And then for me, I don't do everything. The team knows that like when I touch things, that doesn't go well. I'm good at only a few, and I tell them I don't want to be good at everything. I'm not the best at most of the business. I'm really good at sales. I'm really good at vision. I'm really good at steering. I'm really good at the macro stuff. But I trust them. I put people in place and I trust them, empower them. And I basically take the standpoint of, find the right people, give them what they need, get out of their way. And like that in itself builds trust with people. And then you just check back in with them, and are they doing the things that they say they were going to do? What expectations did they give you, and are they meeting them? And then there's a book called Gapology that basically is there's a problem. Is it me? Is it you? Or is it the process? And you basically figure out, using Gapology, you figure out what are those things. So you can use that for training and stuff. But the big thing, you got to be like unwavering. You got to be a guy that they can get behind. And because there's people you'll meet in life that you just know that they're going somewhere. And I don't want to say I've always been this guy, but I do believe I'm that guy now. Like I do believe that when somebody comes in to our company, talks to me, like they know that our ship is going somewhere and I'm the captain, and like you can trust me to make the decisions that need to be made. Appreciate that, Brian. And look, you don't have to be that person right away, but you need to try and become that person. And just by challenging yourself to grow, because people want to get behind people that are growing. Like they don't want to, you don't want to work for a company that's stale, like with a guy that's been doing the same thing for 10 years. We pivot all the time. Like I said, we went nationwide July of last year. It hasn't even been a year. We rolled out a variation of Novations really hard in basically at the end of November. We've already pivoted in the approach on that a little bit. And probably one of the other big things is that these things all tie in together because I make decisions really quick. My team gets to see the way I make decisions, and they trust me to make them because I make them a lot. I get a lot of at bats showing them that like, hey, I'm a guy you can trust. And if they have problems too, you got to really hear them on those and listen to their feedback. People want to be a part of something, so make them a part of it. You know what I mean? So my operations coordinator, Sarah, there's a bunch of stuff that she's doing that I don't know anything about other than the super high level on. I don't know any of the details. She fills me in and I'm like, you're on it. Keep doing what you're doing. Let me know if you need me. And she knows if she needs me, I'm here. Hopefully that's good.
What would you say is the most important leadership trait?
What's the most important one? Man, I don't know. If you're going to have a team, you do have to have a vision that they can all fit themselves inside of. There has to be room for all of them, because otherwise, like, you're not really a leader, because they're just not going to get behind you. There has to be space for them on the boat. And so I'd say that's the number one thing. Even if the expectations are bad, even if you're not the best manager, if you have a vision, first things first, you have to have a seat. That you want to have somebody at your table, like there literally has to be a seat. And like the vision is like the figurative table with chairs at it. You got to make room for everyone. If you don't have that, you're just going to have a really hard time having people stick because they're going to go find somewhere else where there is a seat at the table.
Plain and simple. That's a very good analogy of the vision being the table and making sure everybody's got room. I think you can definitely be put in a place of leadership, but it takes a lot to actually be able to lead.
Yeah, I agree. But if you're not a leader now, it's not something you are just born to do. There are people you will meet that they're just destined to be a leader. They've been a leader their whole life. That's just how they were always wired. But if that's not you, dude, I would just become that. You can literally be. I was a drug addict when I was in high school, man. I got suspended, had to repeat my sophomore year. I went to jail a bunch of times, dude. When I was 19, I had the DEA come to an apartment where I was selling drugs. And one of the guys was like, "Dude, what are you doing, man? What do you want? What do you want out of life?" And then I didn't answer him, but I was super high, and I just sat there and was like, "Dude, honestly, like if I could be anything, I'd just love to be a junkie, just living in my apartment selling drugs. That sounds like the life." And that was me, like literally 10 years ago. Nobody was going to get behind me on anything. So I haven't always been this way. I graduated third to last from high school, didn't go to college. There were like 250 people I graduated with. I was literally third to last. I basically had the minimum amount of credits and grade GPA or whatever to actually get a basic diploma. And so you can become whatever you want. I just looked myself in the mirror and said, fuck that, dude. I don't want that. I just told myself that like literally every day for 3 years. And eventually, here we are.
Love that. Were there any mentors or role models that kind of pushed you along this path?
Yeah, I met my first mentor at the first gym I worked at. I moved with my dad. I was working in a restaurant. He was moving for a job. I was living with him, and he was like, "Hey, I'm moving. You want to come with me?" I'm like, dude, where are we going? I don't have anywhere else to be. So I moved and job interview. And I guess he saw something in me. I mean, he saw something in me because he wanted to recruit me into the network marketing thing, which ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. But he was my guy from when I was 20 to 24. And he just spent a lot of time with me. He exposed me to a lot of people. And I learned a lot from him when his business was doing well. I also learned a lot from him when it failed. We're still in touch and he's doing well now. But even after that, I've paid for mentors ever since we started in the business. So I've spent probably 200 grand on coaching for real estate. So I've spent like enough for a freaking master's degree in this thing. And like I said, I still have a coach now. So part of finding a mentor is look, in the industry, you got to just pay somebody. If somebody's going to mentor you for free, real estate, they're probably not a guy you want to take advice from. Um, I was lucky with that first guy, but he was more of a life mentor and just like he helped steer me a little bit. I started getting my stuff together a little bit. I joined the gym. That was like the first thing. It's probably my first mentor really was just getting into the gym. But he took me from there and helped me grow a little bit. That's it.
You are definitely your greatest investment, if anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely encourage anyone who's, if you really want to do this thing and you want to do it big and you want to do it right, I would definitely pay to play, hire a mentor. Don't get a course. Courses suck. Courses are a really bad value exchange. They're great for, it's like a voice note. Voice notes are great for the sender, but then it sucks to be the receiver because I got to listen to this 3-minute voice message. And if you just took the time to send me a text, I could have read it in 20 seconds. And that's what courses are. They're just really efficient for the person selling them, but they're a really bad. There might be $10,000 worth of value or information in the course, but it's a really bad way to receive the information. So I would get a coach and actually speak with somebody because you can just get information way better. Go to events. I went to an event, a private event in Cancun in October, and dude, I got so much out of that. Just all people that are like my level or higher, and I like literally came home and just started making changes to the business right away. So don't shy away from that. It's just part of what you need to do. There's so much information in the industry that it would be silly to try and actually figure it out all on your own.
Mhm.
It would just be silly to do that.
Don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
On that note, are there any resources or like books or podcasts that you would recommend to people?
Oh man, I'm not a big reader. I did early on. Let me think of a couple. Oh man, what are a couple of those good ones? What would I want to recommend? I don't have one jumping out at me that I'd really be like, this is the book. Let me see what the last book I read was. I had a good one that I read probably 6 months ago. It just depends where somebody's at. I'll tell you a really good book that actually I read a few years ago. That's if you're getting started, it's a good one. Is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I did it as an audiobook and it was really easy to get through because you're just listening to Jocko the whole time. It goes back into the expectation thing. Taking ownership is like a similar, it's a reverse thing of, but of a similar nature. That's a really good one because if you're just getting started, that's where you have to start. Is you got to just take some ownership about what's going on, and when you do start hiring people, I take ownership for mistakes on all the time, even if it's not really my fault. I'll be like, hey, it's my fault, and I'll just test people to see if they take some ownership too. But it makes it easy because you're not there's no blame anywhere. So that's a good one. As far as podcasts, I'll be honest, I'm not listening to a ton right now because it's a lot of repeat. After a few years of listening to them, there's not like a ton of new stuff for me at the point. Also, the podcasts are not really, a lot of the real estate ones aren't necessarily great for people that are doing like a million plus a year. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have any great ones to recommend to people.
This has been
Listen to
a
this one. This is a good one, man. You're getting good guests on here. So subscribe to this one.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
James, this has definitely been an awesome conversation. I think my biggest takeaway for sure is when I ready to put together that team, the team cohesion, making sure everybody's on the same page and setting expectations throughout the process up front. So that's my biggest takeaway today.
Yeah. Let me add one more thing. So I know everyone gets into real estate because they want passive income from real estate, long-term rentals and stuff. That's great. You can build this business where it's pretty passive too. I'm not quite there yet, but like my coach has a CEO in his business. He's not in the business. So you can build this thing in a way where you have the right pieces in place with enough people and enough scale. Like you can do that with this business and make, if you're at that point, you're going to be doing 3, 4, 5, $6 million a year. You can do $12 million a year in this business. So if you're at that level, most people are running, I'd say 30 to 45% net margins. If you're doing 5 million bucks a year, you're probably clearing net $2 million a year. I think you can do that faster than you can build a $2 million a year passive real estate portfolio. It takes a lot of time to get there, and you will get there even faster because you got $2 million a year net that you can invest into, into long-term rentals. So don't get so fixated on the passive income that you skip over building your active income and building a business. Because like all the rentals I have, I stole them. I make a ton of money. I have 11 units and I net $80,000 a year on those units after everything. All the math that everyone does, my net on those is 80,000 a year. I only have 11, so it's like almost pretty close to $1,000. That's probably, you know, seven whatever per unit. And I just started 3 years ago, and that's because I had a business that gave me opportunities. I also had cash. A couple of them are burrs. One of them, I bought 3 duplexes, put 150 grand down, seller financed it, and I stole that property. I probably have 300,000 in equity in that thing, immediate equity. And it's all because I have this part. And so a lot of people, what they do is, here's the order. Here, I'm gonna give you guys one final takeaway. You got to build yourself, and then you got to build your active income, and then you have to build your passive income. And what a lot of people who get into the industry, they do is they're broken. They don't have any active income or very little. It's not where they want to be. And they try and skip both of those things and just like, I'm going to buy some rentals. And then it never comes together because they have no money. They're not even ready for it, and they're skipping this. So you got to build yourself, personal development, all that, read some books, get around people, cut the fat in your life, get into the gym, get in shape, eat better, just all that stuff. Then once that bucket is overflowing, let that pour into your active income, try and make more money. Maybe you stay in your job. Like you don't have to leave your job and start a business like this, but maybe you do want to. It's super realistic to make 250 grand a year net doing what I do. And so then you start filling that bucket, and then that bucket starts overflowing. And then all of a sudden, the passive income becomes just a default setting. Like you're just going to do that because you have your personally developed, your income active is developed, and now it's just a default. And if you skip those things, it just doesn't, I just haven't seen it come together for a lot of people, skipping those first two steps. So if you stay focused on that, I think you guys will have more success. And even if you mess up the passive income part, if you build a big business making $1 million a year or whatever, you'll be pretty happy.
Work on yourself, work on your active, work on your passive. James, where can people go to connect with you, find out more about what you're doing and your projects coming on?
Yeah, follow me on Instagram, the real James Thompson. I haven't been doing any coaching or anything, but we will be rolling out some of that. I'm at a point now where we can start investing into social media and stuff. And there's so much garbage in the industry. I feel a duty to anyone I can help. I just know it's going to be good information because there's a lot of fakers in the industry, and like I actually have a business. So we're going to be rolling that out pretty big over the next couple of months. But follow me there. If you want to get with me, you guys can email me. It's James at goldenrealestatellc.com. Happy to set up a call if you guys are interested in coaching or anything like that. You can reach out. Like I said, I haven't started that yet, but we will be rolling that out anytime. If you're interested in that, reach out. We can talk about it. And yeah, happy to help you guys. Hopefully, some people got something.
Fantastic. I think people certainly will, even in the future. And I'll make sure all those links will be down in the show notes. But James, thanks again. If you guys got value from this, please share it with a friend, like, comment, subscribe, do all the things, helps more people find the channel. Definitely subscribe so you don't miss out on more awesome episodes that are going to be like this. But James, thank you again for coming in.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.